According to SB Nation, over 85% of Mavericks fans approved of their offseason moves. And that's for good reason. This team knew just how much pressure was on them to build a solid roster around Luka Doncic, or else they could lose him. And it's safe to say the team did just that, bringing back their second star in Kyrie Irving, adding great defensive pieces in Grant Williams and Matisse Thybulle, and bringing in some solid guards in Seth Curry and Dante Exum, who they kind of took a flyer on. Yeah, this team crashed and burned last year, not even making the play-in, but now it's very clear that the Dallas Mavericks have a master plan, and it will likely end in a finals appearance or losing their franchise player. After making a monster trade for Kyrie Irving, it's safe to say that Mark Cuban had his eyes on one thing for this Mavericks team, a championship. But whether or not this was the right choice was questionable at best. Not only did this team trade for one of the most unpredictable stars in the entire NBA on the last year of his contract, but they also looked a lot worse after the move went down, going just 9-16 after the Irving trade and having one of the worst defensive ratings in the entire league. Unsurprisingly, this caused an uproar of rumors surrounding both Kyrie and Luka. Would Kyrie leave the Mavericks and take his talents to someone like LA or Phoenix? And would Luka demand out after a nightmare of a season? The concerns surrounding these rumors were honestly pretty valid as well, because this is a team that traded away pretty much all of their young assets for an aging star who is, well, to put it simply, unpredictable. Glue guys for the team like Dorian Finney-Smith that provided elite defense were now gone from the team. And there was just not a lot of depth on this roster. I mean, this team had Markieff Morris and Dwight Powell starting at the 4 and 5. And no offense to those guys, but that's just not even close to a championship caliber team. But despite the immense amount of slander that this Mavericks team got for not even making the play-in, Dallas is just sneakily one piece away from being a true championship contender. As far as offense goes, this team had absolutely no issues after the Kyrie trade. In fact, when Luka and Kai were on the court at the same time, they had the best offensive rating in the entire NBA and the best three-point shooting percentage as well. And this wasn't just shot chucking by the new duo either. Doncic and Irving averaged about 60 points per night combined on very efficient shooting splits. The team really had all the offense in the world and one of the best backcourts in the entire NBA. So what was the problem? Well, plain and simple, this team couldn't outscore their opponents with their elite offensive firepower, and their absolutely horrible defense is really what held them back. And I don't want to throw out a ton of strays in this video, but no offense to Davis Bertans, the team would be better off having a traffic cone out there. The Mavericks knew that they had defensive issues though, which is why we saw them go out and get guys like Williams and Thybulle, who are players that can contribute on the defensive end without having offensive pressure like on their previous teams. Not to mention, this team has some potential young elite defensive talent in Josh Green and Jaden Hardy. So in theory, this team is a contender now, right? I mean, they likely solved one of their biggest problems last year, and the odds of them making a deep playoff run are much higher. So why wouldn't this team be a true championship contender? Well, as much as I'd like to say that this team has the perfect roster, there is still one glaring issue that if fixed would make this team a true championship contender. But if not, and this team flops again, it could cost them everything. That being a solid number 3 option for a championship run. Normally, you don't hear about the number 3 option being the thing that keeps a team from contending, because in the NBA, it's most common to have a star duo that takes up most of the cap and surrounding them with the perfect cast of elite role players to help them win at the highest level. I mean, just look at the Nuggets, who clearly had a number 1 and 2 option, but the 3 guy was kind of up for debate and could change any given night. Unlike Denver though, the Mavericks are in a different situation that will require them to get a 3rd star if they want to guarantee a deep playoff run. And more important than that, stay afloat during the season and get a high seed so they don't miss the play-in like last year. I don't like to be the guy that talks about injuries, but this is just something that we have to talk about given that Kyrie Irving is one of the most injury-prone stars in the NBA, and Luka Doncic has had his fair share of injuries as well, as we saw last year when he missed a ton of time after the Kyrie trade. If one of those guys goes down in the regular season, there's a decent chance that the Mavericks record takes a nosedive due to a lack of offensive production. But if this team had a 3rd star caliber player, then they would be able to stay afloat until everyone is healthy without completely kicking the team out of the playoff picture like we saw last season. Given that the team already has a stacked guard rotation of Luka and Kai, there are really only two options that make sense as far as this third star: a forward or a big man. Obviously, everyone has wanted to see what Luka can do with an elite big man, aside from Kristaps Porzingis, basically since the moment he was drafted. Doncic has so much gravity on the court that bigs could get a lot more looks and opportunities when he has the ball in his hands. With that being said, there are really only 3 centers that make sense for the Mavericks to even pursue, and that are also realistic to acquire. These are all guys that can be threats on the pick and roll, provide rim protection for this team, and some of them can stretch the floor as well, but most importantly, all of these guys are capable of stepping up and being a solid number 3 option. The centers that should be on the Mavericks target list are DeAndre Ayton, Miles Turner, and Clint Capella. Of course, all of these guys are in the tier below guys like Jokic and Embiid, but they still provide elite value for a team like the Mavericks. All of them can protect the rim at an elite level, but guys like Turner can also stretch the floor, which would be very interesting on this Dallas roster to say the least. But as good as these prospects are, I don't think any of them are the perfect move for the Dallas Mavericks, which at this point in time is really what they need. Sure, they would be great additions to open up the offense and provide some support if one of their stars goes down, but really, are these guys going to put them over the top and take them from a play-in fringe team to a championship contender? I don't think so. And on top of that, people are really undermining the fact that this team got 2 solid big men in the offseason, Richaun Holmes and Derek Lively, who are likely going to be huge upgrades over Dwight Powell and JaVale McGee. The perfect move for this team is snagging a power forward that provides length and adds to this team's wing defense. Potential targets that we could see the Mavs exploring are guys like Jeremy Grant, who just signed a massive contract extension, or Tobias Harris, but I just don't see either of these guys getting traded at the moment. However, there is one big name that the Mavericks could make a swing for, and not only has he been in trade rumors, but he's actually the best possible fit for this Mavericks team. Yes, the Mavericks could make a splash and trade for Pascal Siakam of the Toronto Raptors, because why not? The Raptors' direction as a franchise is unclear at best, so maybe if someone swoops in and gives them a solid offer, they get off of Pascal Siakam's contract. But what does this offer look like? Well, lucky for Dallas, Siakam is on the last year of his deal, which means the Raptors will be scrambling to trade him for anything they can get if they think he'll walk next offseason. Looking at a specific package though, in this trade, Dallas sends off Tim Hardaway Jr., Maxi Kleber, and JaVale McGee along with draft capital for Siakam. If this team wants to keep Josh Green, Derek Lively, and Jaden Hardy, they have to give up Hardaway and picks. It's just that simple. But with this trade, the Mavs get a legitimate third option who's a solid two-way player and definitely could contribute at the highest level, as we saw in Toronto's championship run with Kawhi Leonard. And more importantly than that, they make this move without making their defense worse, which was obviously their biggest weakness last year. If Mark Cuban is serious about building a contending roster around Luka and winning now, which it seems like he is, this is the move to make. And if he's not serious and keeps the roster as is, there's a chance that one of Dallas's stars goes down with injury next season and they don't have what it takes to keep winning, which could ultimately lead to Luka becoming the next star to ask out. Don't get me wrong, I think the Mavericks will bounce back this year with or without this trade, but something about Siakam on the Mavericks just seems right. But the Mavs aren't the only team looking to bounce back and become contenders. The Golden State Warriors are looking like they want to make one last run with their current core, but what if I told you there's a free agent out there that could be the Warriors' next young star? Click here to watch that and see why it's a no-brainer for the Warriors to make a move for 7'3" big man Kai Sotto.